Hi, welcome to Budget MTG Decks. All magic fun, all cards under $1. I'm David, and this is my demonic tutor, Ruud.
Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about a fun and effective EDH deck you can build without breaking the bank. Now today's deck is going to be all about doubling up and throwing fireballs.
Exactly.
As with all our decks, there's just one additional build rule, and that is that all cards need to be under $1 in price, with the exception of our commander. So let's take a look at the commander.
And we have a doozy of a commander for you today. We have got Wort, the Raidmother, for 4 and 2 hybrid, either red or green mana. So for 6 mana total, we get a 3/3 legendary goblin shaman. Now she may not be much to look at, but she got a very awesome ability because she enters the battlefield with 2 1/1 red and green goblin tokens. And additionally, each red or green instance or sorcery spell we cast is going to have Conspire. Now, what does Conspire mean? What does it mean? It means that whenever we cast an instance or sorcery, we can tap 2 creatures that share a color with that instance or sorcery, and then we're going to be able to get an additional copy of that spell. So we're not casting that spell, but we're getting an additional copy of that spell. So essentially, the role of this commander is going to be to double up all our instant sorcery ramp. It's going to be to double up all our token creating spells. And it's also going to be to double up our fireballs. So, Ruud, what cards do we need to make this deck work?
We have 20 ramp cards because we need a lot of mana to double up even more. Then we have 12 token creation cards. We have 11 removal and 18 utility cards, other cards that is, and 38 land cards of course.
Yeah. And what is the ideal turn progression?
Turn 1 you could cast a mana dork. Turn 2 some tokens. Turn 3 land ramp. Turn 4, of course, the commander, because he can come in very fast. Turn 5, some draw. And then turn 6, doubling up 2 times with a huge fireball.
Yeah, and killing our opponents.
True.
All right, so let's have a look at the first cards, and those are the ramp cards. We divide the ramp cards into 3 categories. The dorks, which are essentially creatures that ramp us. The land ramp cards. And the single ramp cards, which are essentially cards that only ramp us 1 time. We're going to start off with the dorks, and the first one is Elvish Mystic. For a single green, it's a 1/1 elf that can tap for a green mana.
Which does the same as the Llanowar elves.
And we also have Arbor Elves, which comes next, which is for a single green, and it allows us to tap to untap target forest.
Then we have Boreal Druid. It taps for 1 colorless mana.
And then we get to Keeper of Progenitus for 3 and a green. We've got a 1/3 elf druid. Now, whenever a player taps a mountain, a forest, or a plains for mana, so the last one doesn't really matter for us very much, but that player is going to add 1 mana to his or her mana pool of any type that land produced. So why is this so strong? Well, this deck has only basic lands. It's got only forests, and it's only got mountains, which essentially means that once this card is on the battlefield, it doubles all our lands with respect to the mana production, which is insane. Yes, it also works for your opponents, but we're going to be having a lot more value out of it because we're going to be, first of all, it's only red, green, or white. And of course, it's going to be doubling everything. And other people are going to be playing utility lands, going to be playing guild gates and whatnot. So we're going to be getting a lot of value out of this.
True. The next card is a land ramp card. That's Animist Awakening for green mana and X. You reveal the top X cards of your library. So you should do this later on in the game, of course, because then you have a lot of mana to throw into this. And then you can put all land cards from those cards onto the battlefield tapped. And if you already have 2 instants or sorceries, which you should have, then you can untap those lands immediately after that.
Yeah, so you can use it again.
True.
It's important to remember that this only untaps the lands we just searched with Animus Awakening, so it doesn't untap all our lands. And it's, of course, a nice little target to Conspire once we pump all our mana into this to get double the effect out of it. Farseek is next for 1 and a green. So for 2 mana, we're going to search for a plains, an island, a swamp, or a mountain card and put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle our library. In our case, this is always going to be a mountain. It's nice to play this early, but late game, you can always just Conspire it as well and get 2 lands.
Okay. And you have Rampant Growth for 2 mana, of which 1 green. It's a sorcery, and you may put a basic land card tapped onto the battlefield. Okay.
Same kind of, a little bit better. Primal Growth is next for 2 and a green. So for 3 mana, it's a sorcery. We're going to search our library for a basic land card, put it into the battlefield tapped, and shuffle our library. So it's basically like a Rampant Growth. But if we kick it, which means we're going to sacrifice a creature additionally on top of paying its mana cost, so we're going to have lots of tokens, so we can easily sacrifice one of our tokens, and then we're going to look for 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tap. So it's essentially always going to be giving us those 2, because we're going to want to conspire this. Sorry, it's going to give us 2 because we're going to want to sacrifice a creature. And when we conspire it, what's important to remember is that with cards where we're paying a cost, such as the mana and the kicker, when we copy it with Conspire, we don't have to pay that additional cost again. So essentially, we could pay 3 mana, sacrifice a creature, and if we Conspire this by tapping 2 green creatures, then we're going to be getting 4 lands onto the battlefield tap. That's pretty sweet.
Very nice. Then we have Harrow for 3 mana, and it's an instant. You also have to sacrifice a land, but you can, of course, sacrifice a tapped land. You just tapped for Harrow. And you can search your library for 2 basic land cards and put them onto the battlefield. And that is untapped, of course. So
yeah.
Very nice.
Another great example of one where you have to have an additional cost, which you don't have to pay when you Conspire. Harvest Season is next for 2 and a green. It's a sorcery. We're going to search our library for up to X basic land cards, where X is the number of tapped creatures we control. Put those cards on the battlefield, tapped, and shuffle your library. So we're going to have lots of tokens, so we can, of course, be attacking with a lot of tokens. We don't mind if a few of them die, because after our combat phase, we're going to play this spell. We're going to also Conspire it, so make sure you keep 2 creatures, which are green, behind, so you can still Conspire it, and then you're going to be able to get tons of lands.
Then for 4 mana, we have Explosive Vegetation. It's a sorcery, and it states that you search your library for 2 basic land cards and put them onto the battlefield tapped.
Yeah, this is an example of a card that very often I don't Conspire, because it's at the point of the game where you're going to be playing this so that you can ramp into Wort a little faster. So it's before you have Wort, you play this one. Very similar to Hunting Wilds for 3 and a green. So for 4, we're going to search up to 2 forest cards, put them in play tapped, shuffle our library, but we can also kick it for an additional 4 mana, and then those forests become creatures, 3/3s. Not all your forests, just the ones you searched up with Hunting Wilds. I don't recommend you doing this because it makes them quite vulnerable, and they could die because they're creatures. So usually I just play it for the normal cost and kick it to get 4 forests.
True. Then we have Nissa's Expedition for 5 mana. It's a sorcery, and it says that you can put 2 basic land cards onto the battlefield tapped. But it also has Convoke, which means that if you tap your creatures, each of those you tap, you have to pay 1 mana less. So you can essentially play it for free, just tapping 5 creatures, of which 1 has to be green, of course.
Yeah, so if you got 6 creatures, then you can cast it for free, and you can get it twice, because you can Conspire it as well. Pretty cool. Nissa's Renewal is next for 5 and a single green, so for 6 mana. It's pretty expensive, but we're going to search our library for 3 basic land cards, put in the battlefield tapped, and gain, shuffle our library, and also gain 7 life. So this is a perfect example of a card that you'd love to Conspire, gaining us an additional 6 lands, and 14 life. Nothing to sniff at.
True. Then we have Guy's Touch for 2 mana. It's an enchantment, and it says you may put 1 additional land into play during each of your turns, which has to be a forest. You may sacrifice Guy's Touch to add 2 green to your mana pool. This is also possible if you don't need it anymore.
Yeah, but mostly, it's one of the very few cards that are not instants or sorceries, because it's just so nice that we have so many forests in this deck, and we also have a lot of ways of drawing a lot of extra cards. So being able to put in an extra forest every turn, we put in a mountain and a forest every turn, that would be pretty sweet. Then we have another enchantment, and that is Rites of Flourishing for 2 and a green. So for 3 mana, it's an enchantment. And at the beginning of each player's draw step, we're going to draw an additional card. So it's not just for us, it's for everybody. It's still pretty nice to be able to get that additional draw. And each player may play an additional land on each one of his or her turns. Nice. We're going to be drawing lots of cards, which means we're going to want to put as many of those lands on the battlefield, because we're going to want to ramp like crazy.
Then we go to the single-use ramp cards. The first one is Battle Hymn. For 2 mana, it's an instant, and you can add 1 red mana to your mana pool for each creature you control. So mostly we'll have a lot of tokens, so there's going to be a lot of red mana, doubling up, maybe like 10 creatures. It's a lot of mana.
Yeah, sweet. Early Harvest for 1 and 2 greens, so for 3 mana, it's an instant. Target player untaps all basic lands he or she controls. So what we're going to do is we're going to essentially, once we're ready to use all of our excess mana, we can basically tap all our lands, then use 3 of that to untap all our basic lands, and we're of course going to Conspire this. So then we're going to again tap it, and then before the second one resolves, we're going to tap all our lands again. So essentially getting 3 times our lands, which is in 1 turn, which is awesome.
Really, really cool. Then we have Brass's Bounty for 7 mana. It's a sorcery, and for each land you control, you can create a treasure artifact token. which has you can tap and sacrifice it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool.
Yeah, it's also kind of like three times your mana. Pretty sweet. That is how we're going to be getting all our mana. Now let's move on to the tokens.
We divided the token cards into single-use token cards and repeatable token cards. The first one of the single-use is Dragon Fodder for 2 mana, of which 1 red. It's a sorcery, and you can create 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens.
Yeah, at the beginning of the game, it's nice to just play it just as is, get 2 little tokens we use to block or to attack with, should it be necessary. In late game, yeah, it's not bad to conspire it, so you can get 4 of those guys. Essentially, why we have all these tokens is to make sure that we have as many creatures that can tap to conspire our powerful instant sorceries. Krenko's command is very similar. For 1 and a red, we're going to put 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens onto the battlefield.
Then we have Molten Birth for 3 mana, of which 2 red. It's a sorcery, and it also puts 2 1/1 red elemental creature tokens this time onto the battlefield. But this time you can flip a coin, and if you win, you can return Molten Birth to your hand. Of course, you could also throw dice instead of flipping a coin.
Yeah. Hordling Outburst is next for 1 and 2 red, and this sorcery is going to give us 3 1/1 goblins.
Then we have Goblin Rally for 5 mana. We can gain 4 1/1 goblins.
Oh, nice. Let's see if we can get more than that. Then we move to Revel of the Fallen God. That is for 3, 2 red, and 2 green. It's a sorcery, and it's going to give us 4 2/2 red and green satyr creature tokens with haste onto the battlefield. Why is this card? You may think, wow, that's a lot of mana. These are pretty nice because not only are we getting 4 tokens, which means we can conspire 2 separate spells later on, but also both all the tokens are red and green, which means we can conspire our green or our red instants as sorceries with this one. Whereas with the goblins, we can only conspire our red spells.
True. Then we have Gelatinous Genesis for 1 green mana and 2 times X. It's a sorcery, and you put XX green ooze creature tokens onto the battlefield. So you need a lot of mana for it, but if you have that, you have a lot of really big oozes.
Yeah, we've seen this card go absolutely insane.
Yeah, like 20, something like that.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Of course, you'll want to conspire this once you've got the extra mana. Next is Second Harvest for 2 and 2 green. It's an instant that puts for each token we control, we're going to put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that permanent. So essentially, we're going to get once we have a certain amount, we're going to get 3 times as many on the battlefield. Which of course is nice for both the tokens such as the treasures, which give us extra mana, but also just the creature tokens.
Then we have Azuri's Predation for 8 mana, of which 3 green is a sorcery, and for each creature your opponents control, put a 4/4 green beast creature token on the battlefield, and they fight. They all fight a different one of those creatures, so they have to fight. But you can do this 2 times, and you can kill essentially everything and end up with a lot of creatures.
Yeah. Then we move on to the repeatable token creators, and that is the first one is Young Pyromancer for 1 and a red. For 2, we get a 2/1 Human Shaman. Whenever we cast an instant sorcery spell, we're going to put a 1/1 elemental creature token onto the battlefield. Now, it's important to remember that even though we're conspiring left and right, we're only going to be getting the token for the spell we actually cast and not for the copy, because we don't cast the copy. We just get the effect of the copy.
True. Then we have Spore Mount for 5 mana. It's a 3/3 fungus, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you get a 1/1 sapling creature.
Yeah, and this one's green, so we're getting green. We're trying to get as many green and red creatures, trying to find a balance. Then we move on to Dragon Lair Spider for 2 red, and 2 green. So for 6 mana, we've got a 5/6 spider with reach. This is just a nice body to begin with. Just a solid creature. And whenever an opponent casts a spell, we're going to create a 1/1 green insect token. This is super nice. It gets out of hand really quickly. It's a great blocker, against the flyers, but a great attacker as well. And of course, in multiplayer, people are going to be playing spells all the time, and we're going to get tons and tons of tokens out of this.
Really, really nice. Then we're going to move on to the removal spells.
We divided the removal spells into 3 categories. The first one is the targeted removal that gets rid of some problematic things. Then we've got some board wipes, which allows us to reset the board if things are not going our way. And then finally, the most important part of this deck, and that is the fireballs. These are the ways that we're going to be winning the game by destroying our opponents, by hitting them with extremely large fireballs. So let's have a look at the targeted spells first. First one is Artifact Mutation for a red and a green. It's an instant. We're going to destroy target artifact. It cannot be regenerated. And we're going to create X 1/1 green sapling creature tokens, where X is the artifact's converted mana cost. Now, people are, of course, playing artifacts. It's Commander. And it's nice to be able to get rid of something that might be very problematic. And the nice thing is we're also going to get some sapperlings, which we can use to conspire.
Really, really nice. Then we have a Volcanic Offering. For 5 mana an instant, you can destroy a non-basic land card. And then an opponent of your choice can choose another non-basic land card you do not control. And they destroy that as well. You do the same with 7 damage to a target creature. And an opponent of your choice deals 7 damage to a target creature you don't control.
This is a great card to conspire.
Yeah.
I love it. Getting this effect twice.
Yeah, like killing 4 creatures, killing 4 lands. It's insane.
Absolutely. Hull Breach is next for a red and a green. It's a sorcery. We're going to choose one. Either we're going to destroy target artifact or destroy target enchantment, or we're going to do both. And of course, if we do both and we can conspire, that gives us 4 things that we're going to be able to destroy. Super sweet.
Then we move on to the board wipes. The first one is Sudden Demise. For 1 red mana and X, you can choose a color, and Sudden Demise deals X damage to each creature of the chosen color. So you can choose not red and green if you have creatures, of course.
Yeah.
To destroy, most creatures.
One-sided, yeah, nice little one-sided board wipe. Volcanic Vision is next for 5 and 2 red. So for 7 mana, it's a sorcerer. We're going to return target instant sorcery card from our graveyard to our hand. Then Volcanic Vision deals damage equal to the card's converted mana cost to each creature your opponents control, and then we're going to exile this card. So we're not going to look for our 1 converted mana cost spells. We're going to look for our expensive instants or sorceries, because then essentially we're going to be able to get another casting out of that cool spell. Like, for example, Azura's Predation, which is 8 mana. Then we're going to deal 8 damage to all our opponent's creatures, which is, of course, super powerful.
Yeah, you're going to destroy everything. Then we have Hurricane. For 1 green mana and X, it deals X damage to each creature with flying and each player.
Yeah, this is a great example of a card that kind of works like a board wipe. If we don't have any flyers, so it's nice that if we're in trouble, our opponent's got some small flyers they're going to be hitting us with. We can use this as a board wipe against all their flyers. It doesn't hit any of our creatures, but we can also use it as a fireball in the sense that if our life is higher than our opponent's and we can get it to the point where it's just enough to kill everybody else but not us, then we can just use it essentially like a fireball, which is pretty cool. Then we move on to, the actual fireball spells. First one is Fireball for X and a red. It's a sorcery. This thing's going to deal X damage divided evenly, rounded down among any number of target creatures or players. But for each additional target, we're going to have to pay an additional mana. So it doesn't, if you put in 10 mana into this, so it doesn't, or let's say put in 11 mana into this, you can't do 5 and 5 just by adding an additional mana on top of that. It does spread the damage evenly. So, but it doesn't really matter because you're going to put all your mana into it. You're not going to split it. You're just going to conspire it to then actually double the damage.
True, to kill 2 opponents. The same as Devil's Play, well, not the same, but you're going to use it in the same way. For red mana and X, Devil's Play deals X damage to target creature or player if you conspire to 2 target creatures or players, of course. And it also has flashback to do it even another time, but then you have to pay 3 red and X.
Yeah, this is a great example of a card that maybe early on in the game, you're going to want to use it to maybe get rid of our opponent's commander or maybe a creature that's troubling us, because we know that we've got this one in the graveyard waiting there, that we can just use it later on in the game. And that additional 2 mana we got to pay won't matter to Wort, because Wort's going to have tons and tons of mana later on anyway. Banefire is next for X and a red. It deals X damage to target creature or player. Okay, looks recognizable. And if X is 5 or more, it can't be countered or the damage can't be prevented. Okay, that's really, really nasty, especially if you're against a blue player and they're waiting for that fireball and they got their counter spell up. And if you use this spell, then they're dead anyway.
True. Then we have Fall of the Titans for 1 red and 2 times X. It deals X damage to each of up to 2 target creatures or players. So this time around, if you conspire it, it's going to be up to 4 target creatures or players. Yeah. But it also has Surge, which means that if you cast a spell if you cast another spell this turn, or an opponent did that, then you can just pay red and X. So you can do this if you conspire it for 4 times for just the same cost as a fireball. Yeah. Which is going to be insane.
Yeah, but it's only you can only do the surge if you cast or a teammate. We're not really playing with teammates. So it's really but you're going to be playing. You're going to have played something before this anyway. So you pretty much always can do it for the surge cost, which is
insane. You're going to play a ramp card or something, and then
exactly or something that doubles your mana. Battle him or something. It's you're pretty much always going to be able to get this card. Kills people so hard. Yeah. And then we get to the last of the fireballs, and that is Comet Storm for X and 2 red. It's an instant. It's also got multi-kicker, which means for every 1 mana we pay, we're going to be able to kick it. And it says here, choose target creature or player, then choose another target creature or player for each time you kicked it. We're going to deal X damage to each of it. So now this is an example of for each additional 1 mana, we're going to be able to essentially double the amount of damage it does. And this is also, if we conspire, this is, you can just kill the entire table. Sure. And that is how we're going to be winning. But we could use some cards that could help us out to be able to fulfill this strategy. So let's have a look at the utility cards.
We divided the utility cards into double cards, so you double your spells, into synergy and draw cards. So the first one of the double cards is Reverberate. For 2 red mana, we can copy an instant or sorcery spell and choose new target for the copy.
Yeah, so it's really a way that you're going to be winning the game is, for example, we've got a fireball, which we're conspiring, so we've got 2 fireballs. But of course, while we cast that, so while it's on the stack, we're going to cast Reverberate. So that's another copy of Reverberate, which you're going to copy a Fireball. But we're going to conspire that too. So this is going to get another copy of Fireball. So essentially, while casting that 1 Fireball and 1 Reverberate, we actually get 4 times the effect, which should be more than enough to kill the entire table. Yeah. Howl of the Horde is next for 2 and a red. So for 3 mana, it's a sorcery. It's also going to be able to copy an instant or sorcery, but it has raid, which means that if we did attack with the creature this turn, it's actually going to copy it 2 times.
Really strong. Then we have Wild Ricochet for 4 mana, of which 2 red. It's an instant, and you may choose new targets for target instant sorcery spell, then copy the spell and choose new targets for the copy. So you copy it 1 time, but you could also choose a spell your opponents control, of course, to choose new targets.
That's a super nice little trick when they're wanting to target Wort with something, for example. Then we move on to the synergy cards. These are basically like alternative ways of winning the game. Throne of the God Pharaoh is next. It's an artifact for 2 mana. It's a legendary. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life equal to the number of tapped creatures you control. We've got lots of tokens. We're tapping them even when we're not attacking. We still tap them just to conspire stuff. So having lots of tapped tokens means that every turn, all our opponents are going to be losing tons of life, which ends the game even if we don't draw into that fireball.
Then we have Impact Tremors for 2 mana. It's an enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So if you put down 10 or 20 tokens, conspire stuff, then it's going to do a lot of damage.
Yep. Toil to Renown for 1 and a green. It's a sorcery. We're going to gain 1 life for each tapped artifact, creature, and land you control. So at the end of our turn, of course, we're going to keep 2 untapped because we're going to want to conspire this. And it essentially brings us back all the way back into the game, even if we were down to very little life, because this card really gains you 40 or more life easily.
Then we have Gutter Snipe for 3 mana. It's a 2/2 Goblin Shaman, and it states that whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. Again, this is only the cards you cast, not the copies.
Yeah, but still, to each opponent, it's going to be doing a little bit of damage. Then we move on to the draw cards. First of our draw cards is Magmatic Insight for a single red. It's a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this card, we're going to discard a land card, and then we're going to draw 2 cards. This is a perfect example of a card that, yes, we can cast it early on in the game if we do want to draw into some stuff, but usually we're going to be playing this once Wort's on the battlefield. When our gas is finished, when we've already run out of most of our cards, we're going to play this, we're going to pay the cost, but we're going to conspire it, which essentially means that we only discard 1 land card and, of course, play the spell, but we're going to be drawing 4 cards.
Which is kind of the same as Tormenting Voice, but this time it's for 2 mana, and you can discard a card of your choice.
Yeah. Then we have Wild Guess. That's for 2 red. It's a little bit more difficult to cast. Sorcery is additional cost to cast. We're going to also discard a card, and then we're going to draw 2 cards.
Then we have Catharic Reunion. For 2 mana, you discard 2 cards this time. It's kind of the same, but then you draw 3 cards. So you draw, essentially, when you conspired, 6 cards and discard 2.
Yeah, you may think, I got to discard 2 cards, but really drawing into those, you may be at the point where you've already played land, you've got plenty of lands, and then being able to discard the extra lands to draw 6 cards is a lot of fuel. That's almost nice. Refilling your hand entirely. Harmonize is another great card for 2 and 2 green. It's a sorcery. Draw 3 cards. Nice. You can inspire this. That's for 4 mana. That's 6 cards.
Then you have Primal Command. For 5 mana, you can choose 2 things, of which one is target player gains 7 life, or you can put a target non-creature permanent on top of its owner's library, or a target player shuffles his or her graveyard into his or her library, or you can search your library for a creature card and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. So if you conspire, you can do 4 things with this card.
And that is really not to be underestimated. You're playing, maybe somebody's on the battlefield, they're playing a graveyard deck, you're going to make them reshuffle their thing. You're looking for one of your creatures that allows you to double, that creature that allows you to double all your mana. You get that one into your hand for next turn. Somebody's got that really annoying artifact that's stopping you from being able to do stuff. That goes back to the top of the library. There's so much stuff this card does, and Conspiring is just a great feeling. It's only 5 mana as well. Really great deal. Next, we have a Shamanic Revelation for 3 and 2 green. So for 5 mana, we're going to draw a card for each creature we control. So if we've got, let's be modest. This guy say we got 5 creatures. That's the minimum, basically. Then we're going to draw 10 cards. That's super sweet. We're also going to gain 4 life for each creature we control with power 4 or greater. We're not going to get a lot of those unless we just fired off Azura's Predation, for example. But most of the cases, it's just nice to just completely refill our hand. And it's not even refilling our hand because we're going to have so many extra cards. We're essentially going to search for the exact cards we want for later on in the game.
Then we have Collective Unconscious. For 6 mana, it's a sorcery. You draw a card for each creature you control, which is going to be a lot, of course.
Yeah, very nice. Then we have still draw cards, but these are kind of the cards that are going to be gaining us value out of the graveyard. The first one is Wildest Dreams for double X and a green. It's a sorcery. We're going to return X target cards from our graveyard to our hand and then exile Wildest Dreams. Naturally, a great target for Conspiring. Being able to get, that fireball that we had to cast a little bit earlier, maybe a mana ramp that we're looking for. Essentially, the best stuff that we used earlier in the game.
Then we have Nostalgic Dreams for 2 green. It's a sorcery. You can discard X cards from your hand and gain X cards back from your graveyard to your hand. That's an additional cost. So if you conspire, you can get those cards back again if you would want to. So it's going to draw you a lot of cards from your graveyard. So a lot of fireballs, maybe something like that.
Not even a cost, really, when you think about it like that, huh? And then we move on to Holistic Wisdom for 1 and 2 green. This time it's an enchantment. But it's really good because for 2 mana, we're going to return and we're going to exile a card in our hand from the game. So we can't use that card anymore. But we're going to return target card from the graveyard to our hand that shares a type with the card removed this way. So essentially, all our sorceries in our hand become the best sorcery that's in our graveyard that we want, and all the instants the same story. So we can really just keep on getting those things back.
Really strong. Then we move on to the land cards, of course, essential. Well, this part of the video is going to be very, very short because we only have to say we have 18 mountains and 20 forests among our lands. So let's move on to our conclusion. In conclusion, this deck is a lot of fun. What I really like about this deck is that it has some complicated mechanics, but it's not a lot. If you learn those mechanics, then it's really, really fun to play with. What you can also do with this deck is teach a beginning player how the stack works. And those beginning players really like this deck because it can explode really fast. Yeah, I also really love this deck. It seems so innocuous. It seems so simple. Okay, we're gonna get Wort on the battlefield. She's 6 mana. That's late. Doesn't really matter. Oh, what are you gonna try? You're gonna get maybe a second effect out of a spell, instance or sorcery that you're playing. Okay, it doesn't seem like such a big deal. It is a big deal because you're gonna get Wort out much faster. Then you're gonna mana ramp yourself insanely. Each one of your mana ramps, you're gonna be playing multiple of them each turn, and they're gonna be giving you double the effect, which means that in just a few turns, you're going to be stacking your lands high, up to your chin. You're going to have lands, and then you're going to be doubling those fireballs, and you're not going to win by a little bit. You're going to win. You're going to completely devastate your opponents. There's going to be, halfway through the game, you're just going to be having a couple of tokens. You got Wort. You're not going to be a threat. People are not going to be scared of you. The problem is, as soon as you have all that land, and you're drawing like crazy into your fireballs, once that gets off, boom, you only need to get one off, the entire table is dead. And that is just really, really cool feeling. It's just a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun to play. Out of the blue, you just do 50 damage to each opponent, which is really nice. And people just, but I thought you only had a lot of land and 5 tokens. Like, yeah, but that's all Wort needs to win the game. It's also pretty affordable, right? Yeah, the whole deck is just below $29, and we did the math on, what side did we do the math this time, David? The same one we always do, magiccards.info. Magiccards.info, yeah, okay, exactly. We did it on magiccards.info. So we used all the medium prices. It's a site that compares all the prices of a lot of sites, so you can really buy this deck for below $30, including Commander, including all the lands. Yeah. So it's really cheap. Everybody can buy this deck, I think. Yeah, it's just cheap because it uses such innocuous spells, but because we're conspiring everything with Wort, they
become very powerful. So it's really a very good budget deck actually to build. Now we're going to remind you guys that we have a Patreon page. So if you like what we do, if you like these videos, you want us to make more videos, you want to help us improve the quality of these videos, head on over to patreon.com. We've got different tier levels, but for as little as $1 a month, you can help support the show, and we would really appreciate it. Also, join us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, where we're going to be posting non-budget upgrades for this deck, and we're going to be sharing ideas for upcoming decks, tech techs, set reviews, top 5 lists, infinite combos, all that good stuff. Get notified. But of course, if you want to get all the notifications of the videos, then subscribe to us here on YouTube, and don't forget to hit that little bell button, because then you'll be part of the notification crew, which means that as soon as we upload a video, you're going to get a notification, and then you're going to be able to watch it as one of the first people. So that's it. Thanks for watching. I'm David.
And I'm Ruud.
And this was Budget MTG Decks.